Look at her face. Look closely at those eyes, at that smile, at the woman who has captivated humanity for 500 years, because here's the truth that will shake everything you think you know. She doesn't exist. She never existed. The woman you're looking at right now is a fabrication, a lie that has been hiding in plain sight since Leonardo da Vinci set down his final brushstroke in 1519. In 2015, a French scientist named Pascal Cotte revealed something that sent shockwaves through the entire art world. He had spent 10 full years of his life, scanning and analyzing the most studied painting in human history. He used technology that could see beneath the surface, technology that could peer through centuries of varnish and paint. And what he discovered underneath that iconic smile changed everything. There was another woman beneath the surface, a completely different woman, different face, different nose, different bone structure, different expression entirely. And here's the part that should disturb you. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't even looking at you. The original woman was looking away, turned to her left, as if she didn't want to be seen at all, as if she was trying to escape. By minute 8, you'll see the 4 hidden layers Cotte discovered buried beneath the paint. By minute 14, you'll understand why Leonardo may have deliberately erased the original woman. By minute 22, you'll learn the controversial theories about who she really was. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at the Mona Lisa the same way again. For 5 centuries, poets have written sonnets about her mysterious expression. Scientists have measured the exact curvature of her lips. Psychologists have tried to decode what she's thinking. 6 million people visit her every single year. They stand behind bulletproof glass. They snap photographs. They wonder about her secrets, but they've been wondering about the wrong woman entirely. Let me show you what Pascal Cotte found. Let me show you the face that Leonardo da Vinci didn't want you to see. Florence, Italy. The year is 1503. Leonardo da Vinci is 51 years old. He's already achieved fame that will echo through centuries. He has painted the Last Supper. He has designed flying machines that wouldn't be realized for 400 years. He has dissected human cadavers to understand the architecture of the body. But he's about to begin work on a painting that will consume him for the next 16 years of his life. It started as a simple commission, nothing remarkable. Francesco del Giocondo was a wealthy silk merchant in Florence, successful, ambitious. Recently moved his family to a larger home. He wanted a portrait of his wife to celebrate their prosperity. Her name was Lisa Gherardini. She was 24 years old. She had recently given birth to their second child. The commission was straightforward. Paint my wife. Make her beautiful. Show the world how well the Giocondo family has done. Leonardo accepted the commission. This was routine work for an artist of his stature. A portrait of a merchant's wife. Perhaps a few months of work. Perhaps a year at most. Francesco would pay handsomely. Leonardo would deliver the painting. Lisa would hang on the wall of their new home. Everyone would be satisfied. But here's what happened instead. Leonardo never delivered the painting. He never gave it to Francesco del Giocondo. He kept it for years, then decades. He carried it with him everywhere he traveled. From Florence to Milan, from Milan to Rome, from Rome to the court of King Francis I in France. He was still working on it when he died in 1519. 16 years for a simple portrait of a merchant's wife. What was he doing all that time? What was he changing? What was he hiding? For centuries, historians accepted the simple explanation. Leonardo was a perfectionist. He worked slowly. He obsessed over details. The Mona Lisa took 16 years because Leonardo wanted it to be perfect. End of story. Art historians wrote volumes analyzing her smile. They measured the precise angles of her lips. They calculated the mathematical proportions of her face. They studied the sfumato technique that created those soft, blurred edges. In 2005, researchers from the University of Amsterdam used emotion recognition software to analyze her expression. They concluded she was 83% happy, 9% disgusted, 6% fearful, 2% angry. They published papers. They gave lectures. They thought they understood what she was feeling. But they were analyzing the wrong face. They were studying a mask, a beautiful, mathematically perfect mask, painted over the real woman who existed underneath. And nobody knew, not for 500 years, every poem written about her smile, every song composed in her honor, every psychological analysis of her mysterious expression. All of it was about a woman who never existed. The real woman was beneath the surface, silent, forgotten, erased. Until Pascal Cotte decided to look deeper than anyone had looked before. Pascal Cotte is not an art historian. He's not a museum curator. He's not a professor of Renaissance studies. He's an engineer, French, methodical, obsessive in his own way. He founded a company called Lumiere Technology, specializing in high-resolution digital imaging of artwork. He developed a technique called layer amplification method, LAM for short. It allowed him to see beneath the surface of paintings without touching them, without damaging them, without removing a single flake of centuries-old paint. In 2004, Cotte achieved something that almost never happens. He got permission to scan the Mona Lisa. This wasn't like photographing the painting through the glass like millions of tourists do every year. This was scientific access, controlled conditions, hours of uninterrupted examination with the most sophisticated imaging technology available. The Louvre granted him 3 hours, 3 hours alone with the most famous painting in human history, 3 hours to project multispectral light onto her surface, 13 different wavelengths, from infrared to ultraviolet, each wavelength penetrating to a different depth, some bouncing off the yellowed surface varnish, some reaching through to the paint layers beneath, some traveling all the way down to the original sketches drawn directly on the poplar wood panel 5 centuries ago. He took over 1,650 digital photographs. He processed 240 megapixels of data. He captured every brushstroke, every crack in the aging varnish, every layer of paint that Leonardo had applied and modified over 16 years of obsessive refinement. Then he went back to his laboratory, and he began to analyze layer by layer, paint stroke by paint stroke. What he found in those first weeks of analysis shocked him, but he kept it secret. He wanted to be absolutely certain before he said anything. He analyzed for a year, then 2 years, then 5. By year 10, there was no doubt remaining in his mind. There was someone else under there, and she looked nothing like the woman the world had been worshipping for half a millennium. Look at these 2 faces. Study them carefully. On the left is the Mona Lisa everyone knows, the woman in the Louvre, the woman on 1,000,000 postcards and coffee mugs and t-shirts. On the right is what Cotte found hiding beneath the surface. The differences are not subtle. The hidden face has a bigger nose, wider at the bridge, more prominent, more distinctive. The head itself is larger, about 5 centimeters wider. That's not a minor variation. That's not artistic refinement. That's a completely different facial structure, a completely different bone geometry, a completely different woman. But the most disturbing difference is in the eyes. The Mona Lisa we know looks directly at you. That's part of her power, part of her mystique. Her eyes seem to follow you around the room. She engages with every viewer. She challenges you. She knows something you don't. The original woman wasn't looking at you at all. She was looking to her left, away from the viewer, not engaging, not mysterious, not challenging anyone with that famous gaze. She was looking away, like she wanted to be somewhere else, like she didn't want this portrait at all, like she was trying to escape from the frame itself. And her expression, no smile, none whatsoever. Her lips were neutral, perhaps even sad, perhaps even distressed. The enigmatic smile that has inspired 500 years of poetry and philosophical speculation and psychological analysis. It didn't exist in the original portrait. Leonardo added it later. He invented it. He painted over whatever expression she actually wore and gave her a smile she never made. So here's what we know so far. Pascal Cotte's layer amplification method revealed a completely different woman beneath the world's most famous painting. Different face, different nose, different expression, different gaze direction. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't looking at us. She was someone else entirely. But this wasn't the only secret hiding beneath Leonardo's masterpiece. Cotte found 3 more hidden layers, and each one reveals another piece of what the artist was desperately trying to hide. Let me show you what else he discovered. Cotte didn't just find one hidden image beneath the Mona Lisa. He found 4 distinct stages of the painting, 4 different versions of the woman, each painted over the other like geological strata, like layers of sediment deposited over 16 years of obsessive work, like Leonardo kept changing his mind about who he was painting, or like he was deliberately hiding who he had started with. Let me walk you through them, one by one. Layer 1 is the original sketch, the underdrawing made directly on the poplar wood panel. This is where Leonardo began, simple lines, charcoal probably, maybe chalk. You can see the basic composition taking shape. The seated pose, the 3/4 angle, the landscape stretching behind her. But even in this earliest stage, the proportions are different from the final painting. The head is positioned differently. The body angle isn't quite the same. He was already planning changes. From the very first marks on the wood. Layer 2 is the first actual painted portrait. This is where we see the different woman most clearly, the one looking to her left, the one with the larger head and broader nose, the one without a smile. This is probably Lisa Gherardini, the merchant's wife, the original commission from 1503. This is who Leonardo started painting, and this is the face he decided to erase. Layer 3 reveals something strange. At some point during those 16 years, Leonardo added a pearl headpiece, an elaborate ornament in her hair, more decorative, more expensive looking, something a wealthy, aristocratic woman would wear, not a simple merchant's wife. He enhanced her status, made her look more refined, more important. But then he painted over that too. In the final version, the pearls have vanished. She wears only that thin, nearly invisible veil. Layer 4 is the Mona Lisa we know today, the final version. The woman looking directly at us with that ambiguous smile, the simple clothing, the sfumato technique softening every edge into mystery. This version took 16 years to complete. Leonardo was still refining it on his deathbed, but now we understand something crucial. This final version isn't who he started painting, it's who he ended up inventing, someone entirely new, someone who never existed outside this wooden panel. But Cotte found more than just a different face. He found deliberate erasures, systematic removal of identifying details, evidence of a woman being methodically transformed into someone unrecognizable. Look at her hair in the visible painting. She wears that simple transparent veil, almost invisible, modest, understated, you barely notice it, but beneath the surface she was wearing something completely different, a pearl headpiece, decorative, expensive, the kind of ornament that signified wealth and status in Renaissance Florence. Leonardo painted it, then he removed it. He made her appearance simpler, more generic, less identifiable as any specific person. And then there are her hands, those famously elegant hands resting on the arm of a chair. Calm, composed, perfectly relaxed, but the original position was different. Her fingers were arranged another way, more active, less serene, and she was holding something, a blanket covering her stomach. Art historians know exactly what that pose signifies. It was a standard convention in Renaissance portraiture. Women held blankets over their stomachs in portraits commissioned to celebrate pregnancy, or to commemorate the recent birth of a child. It was a fertility symbol, a maternal image, a statement about womanhood and family and continuation. Leonardo erased it. He removed the blanket. He repositioned her hands. He eliminated every visual reference to motherhood. So what do we have? A different face painted over and hidden, a pearl headpiece removed to make her less identifiable, a pregnancy symbol erased to eliminate personal history. This wasn't artistic refinement. This wasn't perfectionism taking 16 years to get the shadows right. This was systematic erasure. This was Leonardo da Vinci transforming one woman into another, eliminating everything that made her a specific person, replacing her with an idealized mask. The question that haunted Pascal Cotte for a decade was simple: why? To understand why Leonardo might have erased his original subject, we need to understand who she actually was. Lisa Gherardini, the supposed Mona Lisa, the woman whose name adorns museum labels around the world. She was born in 1479 to a family of minor Florentine nobility. The Gherardinis had status but not much money, respectable but struggling. When Lisa was 15 years old, she was married to Francesco del Giocondo. He was 29, a successful merchant in the silk trade. The arrangement was typical for the era. She brought family name and respectability. He brought money and commercial success. Together, they would build a life in Florence. By 1503, when Leonardo received the portrait commission, Lisa was 24 years old. She had given Francesco 5 children. They had recently purchased a larger home. The portrait was meant to celebrate this success, to commemorate their prosperous union, to display on the walls of their new residence as proof of the Giocondo family's rising fortunes. It should have been straightforward. Francesco paid well. Leonardo was the most celebrated artist in Florence. Paint the woman, deliver the portrait, collect the payment, everyone satisfied. But Leonardo never delivered the painting. Not after a year, not after 5 years, not after 10. Francesco del Giocondo died in 1538, 19 years after Leonardo. He never saw the finished portrait of his own wife. The commission he paid for ended up in the French royal collection, then eventually in the Louvre, never in the Giocondo home. Why didn't Francesco demand it back? He was a successful businessman. He knew how to enforce contracts. Renaissance Florence had functioning courts. If Leonardo had kept any other commission for 16 years, there would be records of lawsuits, demands for delivery or refund. But Francesco del Giocondo apparently just walked away. He never pursued the painting. Maybe he lost interest. 16 years is a long time. Lisa was no longer a young mother. The portrait was outdated. Maybe he simply didn't care anymore. Or maybe Leonardo told him something. Maybe he explained that the painting was no longer of his wife, that it had transformed into something else entirely. Maybe Francesco looked at the developing portrait and didn't recognize the woman in front of him. And maybe he walked away because the Lisa he married was no longer there, had been painted over, replaced, erased. Stay with me here. What I'm about to show you explains exactly why Pascal Cotte's discovery matters so much more than a simple artistic revision. The changes Leonardo made weren't random. They weren't about perfection. They were about erasure, about creating someone new. And the theories about who she became are even more disturbing than the fact that she was painted over at all. Leonardo da Vinci was not a simple artist. He was obsessive, perfectionist, endlessly curious in ways that bordered on compulsion. He didn't just paint what he saw, he studied it, dissected it, understood it at the deepest possible level before committing anything to panel. He spent years studying human anatomy. He dissected cadavers in Florence's hospitals, often by candlelight, sketching muscles and tendons before they decomposed. He knew exactly which facial muscles created a smile, which created sadness, which created fear or anger or contempt. He understood the architecture of human expression in ways no artist before him ever had. And he developed a revolutionary technique called sfumato. The word comes from the Italian for smoke or vapor. The idea was to blur the boundaries between everything, between light and shadow, between skin and air, between one expression and another. No hard edges, no clear definitions, everything soft, everything ambiguous, everything open to interpretation. Leonardo understood something profound about human perception. If you make an expression slightly uncertain, if you blur the muscles that create emotion just enough, the viewer's brain fills in the gaps. Every person looking at the face sees something different. Every viewer projects their own emotions onto the ambiguous features. The painting becomes a mirror, reflecting not the subject's feelings but the observer's own psychological state. This is what makes the Mona Lisa so captivating. That smile that seems to shift depending on how you look at it. Those eyes that appear to follow you around the room. The face that seems happy from one angle and melancholy from another. It's not random. It's not accidental. It's engineered, calculated, designed to be a psychological Rorschach test that reveals more about the viewer than the subject. But what if that wasn't the original plan? What if Leonardo started with a specific woman, a merchant's wife with a real expression, real emotions, real identity, and then systematically removed everything specific about her, blurred her features, erased her identifying details, transformed her from a particular person into a universal symbol? There's a letter discovered in the archives of the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, a fragment really, damaged by time and water and centuries of neglect. It appears to be from someone in Leonardo's circle, written sometime around 1510, 7 years into his work on the portrait. The passage that survived reads, "The master continues to labor upon the portrait. He speaks of capturing not the woman who sat before him, but the essence of femininity itself. He says the particular must give way to the universal. The individual must dissolve into the ideal. The particular must give way to the universal. The individual must dissolve into the ideal." This is perhaps the closest we have to Leonardo's own explanation of what he was doing. He wasn't trying to paint Lisa Gherardini anymore. Perhaps he never was after those first sessions. He was trying to paint woman, the concept, the ideal, the eternal. And to do that, he had to erase the particular woman who sat before him, remove her pearl headpiece, paint over her distinctive nose, eliminate the blanket that marked her as a mother, transform her gaze from looking at something specific to looking at everyone and no one, give her a smile that belonged to no human who ever lived. Lisa Gherardini dissolved, and in her place Leonardo created a ghost, a beautiful, perfect, eternal ghost that we have worshipped ever since. But there may have been other reasons for the transformation, political reasons. In 1503, when Leonardo began the portrait, Florence was deeply unstable. The Medici family had been expelled from power. A religious reformer named Girolamo Savonarola had briefly taken control. He organized bonfires of vanities, burning artworks and books he considered immoral. He was eventually arrested, tortured, and executed. The political situation remained chaotic for years. Leonardo worked for whoever would pay him. He had no permanent allegiance. First the Florentines, then the Duke of Milan, then Cesare Borgia, then the Pope, then the French king. He moved constantly, following patronage and protection, and everywhere he went he carried the unfinished portrait with him. Some historians suggest Leonardo kept transforming the painting to suit different patrons. making her look more aristocratic for noble clients, more idealized for royal ones, removing anything that tied her to a specific merchant family in a specific city with specific political associations. By the time he reached France in 1516, the painting was unrecognizable as a merchant's wife from Florence. It had become something transcendent, something that belonged to no particular place or time, something that King Francis I would treasure as a masterpiece of universal beauty rather than a 16-year-old commission from a silk trader. Leonardo died in France in 1519, still working on the painting, still refining, still changing. The portrait passed to his assistant Sally, then to the French royal collection. It stayed in France for 500 years, eventually ending up in the Louvre, where 6 million people visit every year, where they look at a woman who never existed and call her by another woman's name. So Leonardo da Vinci spent 16 years systematically transforming one woman into another. He erased her identifying features, removed her pearl headpiece, painted over her pregnancy symbols, changed her gaze, added a smile she never made. The original Lisa Gherardini disappeared beneath layer after layer of idealized paint. But Pascal Cotte's discovery raised an even more disturbing question. What if the final face wasn't just an idealization? What if Leonardo didn't just erase Lisa Gherardini? What if he replaced her with someone specific, someone whose identity has been hidden in plain sight for 5 centuries? In 2015, 11 years after his initial scan, Pascal Cotte finally revealed his findings to the world. He presented his analysis at a press conference that drew international media attention. The reaction was immediate and deeply divided. Some art historians were stunned. They said Cotte's discoveries explained anomalies they had noticed for years but couldn't account for. The unusual proportions of the face, the slightly androgynous quality of her features, the impossible perfection that seemed to transcend any individual human model. Finally, there was an explanation. She wasn't a person. She was a composite, a creation, a fabrication layered over an erased original. Others dismissed Cotte's work entirely. They argued that layer amplification method was unproven technology, that what Cotte interpreted as a different face was simply an underpainting, a preliminary sketch, standard artistic process. Artists change their minds during 16 years of work. They adjust proportions. They refine features. Nothing Cotte found, they claimed, was unusual for a painting of this complexity. The Louvre issued a carefully worded statement. They acknowledged that Cotte had conducted interesting research. They admitted his technology was sophisticated, but they stopped short of endorsing his conclusions. A spokesperson said his findings were scientific hypotheses that must be taken with caution. They noted that Cotte was an engineer, not an art historian. They emphasized that the museum had not independently verified his claims. But there was something they didn't say. They didn't say he was wrong. They didn't present contradicting evidence. They didn't open the painting to independent analysis by other researchers. They simply called for more time, more caution, more study, and then they went largely silent. The hidden face remains officially unconfirmed to this day. No consensus has emerged. No independent verification has been published. The Louvre has not granted additional access for scanning. Pascal Cotte's discovery exists in a kind of limbo, too significant to ignore, too controversial to accept. But Cotte's revelation ignited something else entirely. A firestorm of alternative theories about who the final face might represent. If the visible Mona Lisa isn't Lisa Gherardini, who is she? Some historians proposed she might be Caterina, Leonardo's mother, the woman who gave birth to him out of wedlock and then, for reasons lost to history, gave him up. Leonardo was raised by his father and stepmother. He saw his biological mother rarely, if at all. Some biographers believe he carried grief and longing for her throughout his life. What if the Mona Lisa was Leonardo's attempt to paint the mother he never really knew? An idealized memory of the woman who abandoned him. It would explain the transcendent quality of the face. The way she seems maternal but unknowable, loving but distant, present but unreachable. Others suggested the subject might be Isabella d'Este, a powerful Italian noblewoman who desperately wanted Leonardo to paint her portrait. She wrote to him repeatedly over many years, requesting, then demanding, then pleading for a portrait. Leonardo consistently refused, but maybe he painted her anyway, secretly, hidden within the guise of the Giocondo Commission, taking the payment from Francesco while creating a portrait for someone else entirely. But the most controversial theory emerged from forensic analysis of the face itself. In 2011, before Cotte made his full findings public, Researchers used facial recognition software to analyze the Mona Lisa. They compared her bone structure to Leonardo's famous self-portrait, the red chalk drawing of an elderly bearded man that Leonardo made late in his life. The results were strange. The facial proportions matched far more closely than they should. The bone structure was similar. The angles aligned. The geometric relationships between features corresponded in ways that seemed beyond coincidence. At the time, researchers couldn't explain what this meant. Perhaps Leonardo unconsciously painted his own features into his work. Perhaps all artists do this to some degree. The study was noted and largely forgotten. But Cotte's discovery provides a possible explanation. What if Leonardo didn't just erase Lisa Gherardini? What if he replaced her with himself, a feminized version of his own face? Look at the Mona Lisa again with this possibility in mind. The face contains both masculine and feminine qualities, more androgynous than typical female portraits of the era. The jaw is slightly strong, the brow slightly heavy, the proportions slightly ambiguous. This might be the result of painting a female face and then layering elements of a male face over it, creating a hybrid, something neither fully feminine nor fully masculine, something that never existed as a human being. Leonardo da Vinci never married. He left no children. He was accused of sodomy in his 20s, though the charges were dropped. Modern biographers widely believe he was homosexual. Some scholars have suggested that the Mona Lisa might be Leonardo's exploration of gender itself, his attempt to transcend the binary, to create beauty that belonged to no single category. The world's most famous woman might be a man, or something beyond either, an androgynous ideal that Leonardo spent 16 years perfecting, erasing the original female subject, layering in elements of his own features, creating something new. It sounds impossible, absurd, but is it more absurd than what we now know for certain, that the visible face is not the original face, that Leonardo deliberately painted over and erased the woman who sat before him? If you've made it this far, you understand how deep this mystery goes. You understand that the Mona Lisa isn't just a painting. It's an act of erasure, an act of creation, maybe an act of self-portraiture disguised as a portrait of someone else. But there's one more dimension to this story that we haven't explored yet. What the discovery means for us, for the millions who have stared at her face, fallen in love with her smile, wondered what she was thinking. We've been wondering about the wrong woman. And that changes everything. For 500 years, we've been looking at her. Poets have written sonnets about her mysterious smile. Philosophers have debated what she's thinking. Psychologists have analyzed her expression. Musicians have composed songs in her honor. Millions have traveled thousands of miles to stand behind bulletproof glass and snap photographs of her face. But what exactly have we been worshipping? If she's not a real person, what is she? The Mona Lisa isn't smiling at you. Lisa Gherardini might have been. The original woman might have worn a real expression. She might have had real emotions, real thoughts, real personality, a specific person with a specific life and specific joys and sorrows and hopes and fears. But Leonardo erased her. He painted over her humanity, and in its place he gave us a mask, a beautiful, mathematically perfect, psychologically engineered mask, designed to reflect our own emotions back at us, designed to make us project our feelings onto an empty template, designed to make us fall in love with our own reflections. We've made her a symbol, an icon, a brand. Her face appears on everything from coffee mugs to shower curtains. She's been parodied 1,000,000 times, referenced in every medium, become shorthand for artistic mystery itself. But an icon of what exactly? The skill of Leonardo, the mystery of the unknown, our own projections and fantasies. Perhaps that's what Leonardo intended all along. He didn't want us to see Lisa Gherardini. He wanted us to see ourselves, and for 5 centuries we've done exactly that. We've stared at a mirror we thought was a window and never noticed the difference. But somewhere underneath that famous smile, a real woman exists. Her features are different. Her expression is neutral. Her gaze is turned away from us. She wasn't trying to captivate the world. She was just sitting for a portrait. A merchant's wife in 1503, 24 years old, mother of 5 children, probably thinking about domestic matters, perhaps uncomfortable with how long the sittings were taking, perhaps wondering when she could return home. She was erased, systematically, deliberately, by the greatest artist who ever lived, and for 500 years nobody knew she was there. Nobody thought to look beneath the surface. Nobody imagined that under the world's most studied face, another face was waiting. Lisa Gherardini died in 1542, 63 years old. She had lived to see her children grow, had likely heard that Leonardo died with her portrait still unfinished, still undelivered. Perhaps she wondered what he had done with it. Perhaps she didn't care anymore. Perhaps she had forgotten those sittings from nearly 40 years before. She never knew what Leonardo created, what he took from her, what he gave the world in her place. She never knew that millions would worship a face that wasn't hers, would call it by her name, would wonder what she was thinking without ever seeing her actual expression. She deserved better. She gave Leonardo her time, her presence, her face, and he erased her. In the archives of the Florentine Registry Office, there's a simple entry from July 15, 1542. It records the death of Lisa Gherardini, wife of Francesco del Giocondo, mother of 5 surviving children, 63 years of age, buried at the convent of Sant'Orsola. There's nothing remarkable about the entry. Thousands of similar records exist from that period. Birth, marriage, death, the administrative paperwork of human existence. But reading it now, knowing what we know, there's something unbearably poignant about those dry, bureaucratic words. Here was a woman who actually lived, who bore children and buried some of them, who managed a household and grew old, who had good days and terrible ones, who laughed and wept and worried about money and wondered about the future. And somewhere, as she aged and her memory faded, there was a painting, a portrait that had been commissioned of her when she was 24 years old, a painting that Leonardo da Vinci had kept for 16 years and then taken to France, a painting that had become the most valuable artwork in the world. But it wasn't her anymore, hadn't been for years, maybe decades. The woman on that panel had different features, a different expression, a different gaze. The Lisa who sat for those sessions in 1503 had been painted over and replaced with someone imaginary. She died without knowing, without ever seeing what her portrait had become, without understanding that the whole world would worship a face that wasn't hers while calling it by her name. The irony is almost too perfect. The most famous woman in art history might not be the woman she's named for. The face millions travel to see might belong to no one who ever lived. And the real Lisa Gherardini lies buried in Florence, forgotten, unmarked, while an invention wearing her identity hangs in the Louvre. Pascal Cotte spent 10 years uncovering the hidden face beneath the Mona Lisa. He revealed that the woman we worship was systematically created through erasure and invention. The original subject was painted over, her identifying features removed, her face replaced with something idealized and perhaps androgynous. The art world divided over his findings. The Louvre stayed silent, but the discovery raised a final question that matters more than any other. What do we do with this knowledge? How does it change how we look at art, at faces, at the stories we've been told for centuries? The Louvre's response to Pascal Cotte's revelations tells us something important about how institutions protect their narratives. They didn't argue with his data. They didn't present contradicting evidence. They didn't invite other scientists to scan the painting and verify or refute his claims. They simply suggested caution, called for more time, then went quiet. Interest in the Mona Lisa exploded after the 2015 announcement. Visitor numbers increased, documentaries were commissioned, books were published. Everyone wanted to know about the hidden face. The Louvre benefited enormously from the renewed attention. The mystery deepened. The crowds grew larger. The world's most famous painting became even more famous and more inaccessible. You can't get close to the Mona Lisa today. You stand behind bulletproof glass, in a climate-controlled room filled with the hum of machinery, surrounded by hundreds of other tourists, jostling for position, raising phones above their heads, trying to capture something of the experience. Most visitors don't realize how small the painting actually is. Only 77 by 53 centimeters, about 30 by 21 inches, smaller than a typical movie poster. But it draws 6 million people a year, more than any other artwork in human history. They come to see her smile, to wonder what she's thinking, and now, increasingly, they come with another question. Is she even real? Is the face there looking at the original, or is it a mask painted over someone who was erased? The debate continues today, almost a decade after Cotte's announcement. No consensus has emerged among art historians. Some embrace his findings as revolutionary. Others dismiss them as overinterpretation of normal artistic process. The hidden face remains officially unconfirmed, neither proven nor disproven, existing in permanent uncertainty. Pascal Cotte has continued his research in the years since his initial revelation. He's scanned dozens of other famous paintings. He's refined his layer amplification method technology, And he's hinted that the Mona Lisa contains even more secrets than he's revealed publicly. In interviews, he's suggested there are additional hidden layers he hasn't fully analyzed, more mysteries waiting to be decoded. He remains firm in his core conclusions. The hidden face is not simply an underpainting. It's not just a preliminary sketch that Leonardo refined. It represents a deliberate transformation, a systematic erasure, and until someone proves otherwise with superior data, he stands by what he found. But proof is difficult to obtain. The Louvre controls access to the painting. Independent researchers can't simply request scanning time. The technology required is expensive and specialized. The expertise to interpret the data is rare, and institutional resistance remains strong. The Louvre has no incentive to allow studies that might complicate their most valuable asset's mythology. Some experts believe future technology will eventually settle the question. More sophisticated scanning methods, artificial intelligence analysis, imaging techniques that haven't been invented yet. Perhaps someday we'll be able to reconstruct the hidden face completely. See her as Leonardo first painted her, before the smile was added, before the gaze was changed, before the pearl headpiece was removed, before the blanket was erased. Until then, she waits beneath the surface, silent, invisible, the original woman, the forgotten subject, hidden in plain sight beneath the most scrutinized face in human history. The painting that hangs in the Louvre isn't just the world's most famous artwork. It's a psychological experiment that has been running for 5 centuries. Every person who looks at her sees something different. Every viewer projects their own emotions onto those ambiguous features. The slight smile seems happy to some and melancholy to others. The eyes appear warm and inviting or cold and judgmental depending on who's looking. This was Leonardo's intention. His sfumato technique wasn't just about soft brushwork. It was about engineering ambiguity, creating a face that functions as a mirror rather than a window, making viewers see themselves rather than the subject. And he succeeded beyond anything he could have imagined. The Mona Lisa has been called serene and disturbing, motherly and seductive, knowing and naive, simple and infinitely complex. She has been analyzed by psychologists and philosophers, studied by neurologists mapping how human brains process faces, examined by computer scientists trying to decode the mathematics of her proportions. But all of it, every study, every poem, every song, every analysis, all of it was about a face that was invented, engineered, painted over someone real. For 500 years, we've been in relationship with a ghost. A beautiful, perfect, psychologically optimized ghost. We've wondered what she was thinking. We've fallen in love with her mystery. We've projected our hopes and fears and desires onto her features. And all along, beneath the paint, another woman waited. A real woman, with a real face, and real thoughts that we'll never know. What does it mean that the world's most famous face might not be real? Maybe it means we need to look harder. At the art we think we understand. At the faces we think we know. At the stories we've been told for centuries. Surface and truth aren't the same thing. What we see isn't always what exists. Maybe it means Leonardo was an even greater artist than we realized, creating not just a portrait but a mirror, not just an image but an experience, a psychological phenomenon that would captivate humanity for half a millennium and counting. Or maybe it means something simpler, something more human, something sadder. Maybe it means a woman was erased, her face painted over, her identity removed, her expression replaced with something manufactured, and no one noticed. No one cared to look beneath the surface. For 500 years, we stared at her replacement. We called it by her name. We wrote poetry about a smile that was invented. We fell in love with a gaze that was designed. The real woman was underneath, all along, waiting, silent. Lisa Gherardini deserved better, if that's who the hidden face shows. She sat for Leonardo. She gave him her time, her presence, her face. And he erased her, kept her portrait, never delivered it, transformed it into something that belonged to no one and everyone. She died without knowing, without ever understanding what he had done. Next time you see the Mona Lisa in person or in reproduction, remember this. There's someone else under there, beneath the smile, beneath the mystery, beneath 500 years of adoration and analysis and obsession. A woman who was painted over. A face that was hidden. A person who was forgotten. Until a scientist spent 10 years looking for the truth, projecting light through centuries of paint, measuring reflections wavelength by wavelength, seeing what no one else had thought to look for. And finally found her. Somewhere beneath the world's most famous smile, another woman waits. She isn't smiling. She isn't looking at you. She's looking away, as if she wants to be somewhere else, as if she's been waiting 500 years for someone to see her. Pascal Cotte saw her, now you know she's there. The question is what we do with that knowledge, whether we keep worshipping the mask, or whether we finally acknowledge the woman underneath. The real woman, the forgotten woman, the erased woman. The one whose name we've been using for someone who never existed. Lisa Gherardini. Still waiting, still hidden, still hoping someone will finally see her. If discoveries like this fascinate you, if you want to know what other secrets are hiding in plain sight within the art and photographs and documents we think we understand, consider subscribing to this channel. Every investigation reveals something unexpected. Every surface hides depths we never imagined. Share this video with someone who loves art, or mysteries, or just wants to know the truth beneath the stories we've been told. Because the more closely we look at what we think we know, the more secrets we find. The Mona Lisa taught us that 500 years ago. We're only now beginning to understand what Leonardo was really showing us.